Great. Thank you, everyone. We can get started now. Okay, so good evening. My name is Marnie Walsh, and I'm the Empowerment Coordinator with American Promise. Thank you for attending this monthly call called American Promise Connect. This evening is going to be filled with excitement and a lot of information. Before we hear from Jeff Clements and Alan LaPolice about what American Promise is working on, I would like to introduce our new Empowerment Coordinator, Chris Mcdonald.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you very much, Marnie. It's great being here with you guys. I'm really excited starting at American Promise. And American Promise, we have launched skills and advocacy training in nuanced areas such as friend banking, writing letters to the editor, and much more. And we'd love for you to join and register for these calls going to AmericanPromise.net. You click on the Take Action button and then attend an event. Later on in the call, we're going to have some time to have a discussion about these skill and advocacy teams. So think of some questions and hold those for the end of the call. But right now, I'd like to take a moment to turn it over to the president of American Promise, Jeff Clements, and our deputy national political director, Alan LaPolice. Take it away, guys.
Hey, thanks, Chris, and hello, everybody. Great to see you all. We're going to bring Alan in a minute, but first I wanted to just welcome you all to this call. Thank you, Marnie, for that introduction. I hope you guys like the video as much as we do and share that. It's a great quick intro that really captures some of the spirit. So feel free to share that. But I wanted to say at first a little bit about this call. We are streaming live on Facebook. This is some of our most experienced citizen leaders, and you know who you are out there, been with us helping to do this great work across the country, but it's also for people entirely brand new to American Promise. And so I want to give a special welcome to you, anyone who is joining us for the first time. We do this once a month, first Monday of every month. This is the first one in this iteration, so give us feedback. It's an interesting thing because we'll have parts of this that will make great sense and give clear action, next steps to people who've been doing this for some time. And we'll have things that are, if you're just coming to American Promise for the first time, you will find very useful information. And most of all, I say, you're most welcome here. We don't care about your politics or your party or no party. We care about whether you, like the rest of us, and like almost all Americans, believe in freedom, equal rights for everyone, and the need to do some big work now to put our country back on the track of effective self-government. So that's what American Promise is all about nationwide. That is our mission. We're going to put those principles back into the Constitution and back into our civic fabric. We are working on the next amendment to the US Constitution. I'll say how far along it is in just a minute, but a constitutional amendment is a big thing. We've done it 27 times, and this will be 28. And what it will do is enable us, we the people, in our states and nationally, in our communities, to stop the domination of billionaires and other big money in our elections so that the people are heard and represented effectively. So how are we going to do that? Well, technically, we need 2/3 of Congress, and we need to have that ratified in 3/4 of the states. American Promise launched with a 10-year game plan in 2016 to unite Americans across the board to do this great work. And we're making great progress. Our target date is early 24 or 2024 for the successful vote in Congress, 290 votes in the House, 67 in the Senate. And then it goes through the 38 state path to ratification. And that's really important because the answer to how we get a dysfunctional, hopelessly divided Congress to actually do something like that and then move through state legislatures is it's up to us. We don't spend dollars and dollars and dollars in Washington trying to just get the right members of Congress to do this. We are spending our focus, and it really works, on uniting Americans to do this right where you live. So this is about, how do you do that? How do you connect with others who want to see this? How do we have most impact in our states, in our communities, to achieve this historic, huge transformational reform. That's what we'll be talking about tonight. That's what we do. There's some amazing volunteers on this call who have done that, and we'll be sharing how it works. And we're quite confident. We have reason for confidence. The constitutional amendment I'm talking about has been introduced in the House with a Republican lead co-sponsor, a Democratic lead co-sponsor. It will have, by the end of this Congress, certainly over 200 co-sponsors. We'll talk about how you can help make that goal. Most of them on that particular bill happen to be Democrats because they got a jump on that some years ago. And we have a very good amendment introduction that we're working on. Again, we'll ask for your help for Republicans to introduce, and we'll bring it together in a strategic way. This has virtually overwhelming support across the country, Republicans, Democrats, Independents. And that's the powerful force if we use it, is that, as you know, if you've had these conversations, people want to do this, and they're with us. It's up to us to show them the pathway and bring them in to this work so that we can get it done. I want to just take a couple of minutes and say some shout outs, which we will always do because this isn't always easy work. And people do extraordinary, inspiring things. Two of them are on the call tonight. Marie Hanselder-Kimmel, Dr. Marie Hanselder-Kimmel is a New Jersey chapter leader of American Promise, volunteer like most of us, and has facilitated recently her chapter, a great conversation with their member of Congress. And she'll say more about that. Marie, thank you for that great work, and as well for starting the healthcare network, which I'm going to say something else about. But before I do, Ellen Greenbush of Ohio. I don't know if Ellen's on the call, and Ted Knappy in Ohio, a big scandal, bribery scandal there, and they are really firing it up to give people a chance in Ohio, a chance to respond. Candidate pledges, letters to the editor, all kinds of great stuff. So way to go, Ohio. Vicki Barnes is on the call tonight, and you'll be hearing more from Vicki. And she's been tabling recently in Minnesota, and we've been tabling, as we call it. That's really getting out and talking to our neighbors, our friends, meeting people where they are and telling them about this work. They sign up in droves, and I can attest to that personally. I'm going to share my screen and show you. This here is on Sunday in Lewiston, Maine. I was there with two more people I want to give a shout out to, Amy Cartmel and Hillary Shend, and three actually, Aidan Nickel there in the middle. And we were talking to Mainers at the Lewiston Farmers Market. And I can tell you, we signed up Republicans, Independents, Democrats. When we said, do you want to help get billionaires out of Maine's elections? People literally stopped in their tracks and turned around to say, where do I sign? And we just had amazing conversations. It's great to be out again after this past year. So we'll be talking more about how you can do that. One last thing before I bring Alan in. We have a model and it works. It's called Ready to Ratify. And again, it's citizen driven, it's up to us. And it's not just talking to politicians. We have to do that too. We have to do the candidate pledge, but we really have to bring this conversation into Rotaries, into business groups, into local schools, into town meetings, into faith meetings. That's what we call Ready to Ratify. You know, your legislature might be ready to vote for this today. Your member of Congress might be. That's not enough when we're looking at a 10-year game plan with a 2024 vote and a 2 or 3 year ratification fight against powerful forces. The way we win this is by having all the Americans who want this done have a way to have their voice heard. And we use a network strategy. And so Ready to Ratify means is your state so supportive of this? So business people, faith leaders, veterans, farmers, doctors, nurses, all know about this American Promise Amendment and want to help get it done. And it's really exciting. I mentioned that Marie, a physician, helped start with Ellen Greenbush, who I also mentioned, healthcare workers for American Promise. There's business for American Promise, and maybe we can get that link in the chat, Marnie, for sign up if you're a business person and you haven't signed it yet. please do that. We'd have Rotary presentations and veterans and so many more. That's how we use network strategy, use our own power as citizens who are involved in all these different walks of life, as we are, to actually bring this nonpartisan, very supported movement into our communities so that others can get involved, and bring them on this call next time, because we will be doing this every week and everyone is welcome, as I said. So that's on Ready to Ratify. Lots more to come. We have trainings on that, a series of videos about how you can do it in your state. And Marnie will say more about that. But without further ado, I want to introduce my friend, Alan LaPolice, our Deputy Political Director. It's great to have Alan on the team. I first met Alan a few years ago at a conference for anti-corruption. And we talked about this for a long time. He's a Kansas, 5th generation farmer in Kansas. He's a combat veteran. He's an educator. He came to us from the VA where he's helping veterans. And he's a congressional candidate from Kansas with this as his mission when he ran. He's now with us, helping us do this great work across the country. So I'm going to turn it over to Alan with a screen share one last time to introduce Alan one last way, which he is modest about, but I think it reflects a lot about Alan's commitment to this cause. And so we're going to share a screen again, and you'll see Alan's campaign advertisement when he ran for office. So here we go, if I do this right. And we'll just fire away here. And this is Alan LaPolice, who you'll hear about from more in 30 seconds.
Knows exactly what's wrong with Washington. Money. Over $2 million was spent to get Dr. Roger Marshall into Congress, and already over $2 million more just to keep him loyal. Wall Street gets record profits while the ag economy suffers. Somebody has got to do something to fix it. My name is Alan LaPolice, and I'm that somebody. Too much? You ain't seen nothing yet.
So that is our Alan, and he's with us tonight and every day in this. He almost upset a Republican incumbent in a Republican primary running in Kansas. This is a message that Americans are hungry for, and somebody, not literally to use a flamethrower, but to start talking about what we all know is true and doing something about it. And that's what he's doing with American Promise. So Alan, welcome to the call. I don't see you out there, but I know you're there, so take it away.
I am here, and it's always a pleasure to follow you, sir. It's only a little bit awkward following myself. So the first thing I want to mention, if you noticed in that, I was wearing a DD-214 shirt, and so as Jeff had mentioned, I'm a combat veteran, served in the Army, and I've been tasked with putting together a council, if you will, drafting veteran statement of principles. Veterans seem like an obvious group that would absolutely be for, anti-corruption and full representation in our own democracy. So anyone out there, if you're a veteran, or if you know a veteran, or if you have input from the perspective of a veteran, by all means, reach out to me, and I'd love to get your input, because that's something near and dear to my heart, and it's something I want to make near and dear to American Promise and our mission. So let me do a couple of things. The first thing I want to do is follow up on our Citizen Lobby Day and say that it was a tremendous success. Those several days were wonderful. We had nearly 100 meetings with members of Congress from across the political spectrum. They all went pretty well, some better than others. There were some surprising moments, but it was great. As a result, there were several members of Congress that signed up, some because they were convinced, and some simply didn't realize, hey, I haven't signed on to this session. So it was successful for that, but mostly it was successful because it was a major citizen activism movement. All the AP chapters were activated, they were engaged, they were working their members of Congress as it should be. And this is literally the grassroots, which is what American Promise is about. So for that, it was a tremendous success. If you haven't seen it, there are several Lobby Day videos, and all of the links I refer to we'll share in an email following this presentation. But there's some great Lobby Day training videos. For those of you who have never participated in a Lobby Day, I recommend watching them because I will task you with participating in next year's Lobby Day, but also making Lobby Day at the state level too. Your state legislature needs to know how you feel. But back to the last Citizen Lobby Day, there were two different types of asks. If you met with a Democratic member of Congress, you were asked to share with them HJ Res 1 and the language and make sure that they were on board. Now, this is worth me sharing my screen quickly. Sorry if it takes me just a second. Let's see. Hopefully you can all see my screen. These are members of Congress who in the past have signed on to the 20th Amendment, the Get Money Out of Politics Amendment, if you will, or HJ Res 1, as it's called now. These 31 members of Congress are not currently signed on in this current session. So I'm going to put this, or if Marnie would be so kind as to put this in the chat. These members of Congress simply, we need to reach out and remind them that they're not currently on there as a sponsor of HJ Res 1. So I see a lot of Californians in there, some Floridas, Massachusetts, Minnesotas. If you see someone from this list and you know of someone that lives in that congressional district, by all means, reach out and remind this member of Congress to put their name on HJ Res 1. Next, let's see. The other things that you would want to do with Democratic members of Congress, ask them to sign, to either draft, or you can draft and they can submit a letter to the editor to help educate constituents on the amendment. Ask them to participate in town halls or public forums and discuss the amendment. The more they talk about it, the more people become aware of it. And if you took a Lobby Day meeting and you met with the legislative aide, by all means, try to secure a meeting with the actual member of Congress and let them know how important this is to you. If you had a Republican member of Congress for your Lobby Day meetings, this is important. There's a distinction with the Republican ask. We are not asking them to sign HJ Res 1. We have alternate language. It's brilliant language. It's constitutionally sound, but ask them to look at our alternate language, which I'll give you a copy of in the follow-up email, and ask them for collaborations. Ask them to take a look and perhaps draft their own version. Ask them if they see any red lines, what those red lines are, and how we could overcome them. Ask them to find meaningful solutions to this political dilemma that we all find ourselves in. Some of the Republican leave-behinds included a one-pager that was pretty good. There's also the Business at American Promise talking points. They're tremendous. Again, I'll give you all of these in an email follow-up. There's a great document called A Constitutional Remedy for Campaign Money Aristocracy. There's also a good video that you'll find on YouTube, but I'll give you the link as well. And it's called The Conservative Case to Get Money Out. It's a tremendous video, and it really does help you with the talking points when you deal with Republican members of Congress or Republican constituents who are saying, well, this sounds like a Democratic agenda item. It's not. This isn't Democrat. This isn't Republican. This is American democracy, and it's the very lifeblood of it. The last thing I want to talk to you about, it's sort of a teaser. In future meetings, I would like to give more information about our candidate pledge program. As the midterms are approaching, there will be elections this fall, and then there's going to be the major midterm push in 2022. So if you know of any candidates or existing legislators, either state or federal, that have not signed a candidate pledge, push them to sign the candidate pledge. You can do that by logging on to, I'll also give you this. It might be worth putting this in the chat. Let me copy this hyperlink. This is an easy one. But if you go to, I guess it's congress.gov, you can look up your state. You can look up your legislators. You can also go to your Secretary of State's website for each state. Go to the Secretary of State's website for your state. There should be an elections tab, and there should be a candidate list by cycle. That's going to show every single candidate who's filed for office. If you think it's important to address this with them, reach out to them. Their information will be present reach out and see if you can't convince them to sign the candidate pledge. If they do sign it and they win, you can tell them that's the reason that they won. And if they fail to gain that seat, you can remind them maybe they should have signed our pledge. With that, those are my asks of you. I would say continue to do the great work that you do, and don't hesitate to reach out to me for any assistance that you might need. Or more importantly, we've got the best resource, Jeff Clements. And with that, I will turn it back over to his very capable hands.
Capable, but I still had to find the mute button. Thanks, Alan. Really appreciate that. We'll get those follow-ups in the chat. I'm going to run through just some quick summary of what you can do if you want to start taking action right now, including those things. But then we're going to open it up to 10 minutes or so of questions. So if you have questions about any of this, I know we've covered a lot. If you're completely new and you're wondering what is going on here, what's the amendment, what's American Promise, again, you're welcome. Don't sign off. Now is the time for you to ask any question you want about us and how you can get involved. And so let me just summarize though. Alan covered some really key things. We did an amazing Citizen Lobby Day just a few months ago, not daunted by the pandemic or the inability to go into Capitol Hill. We had an incredible online National Citizen Leadership Conference, 100 meetings with staff or members of Congress, a good strategy, including sign on to HJ Res 1. So that's number one. Take a look at the Democratic members of Congress who were signed on to this last Congress. They just haven't been asked. They're not against it. They haven't changed their mind. They just need a call from their constituents, an email. They're on board. They're our friends. No need to be unkind. Just, let's get them on board. So that's number one. If you live or know anyone who lives in their districts, get that ask in so they get on board. And number two, if you have Republican representatives, as most of us do at all various levels, we have a very good conversation, as Alan said, and an excellent amendment proposal we'd love them to introduce. There's nothing wrong with the Republican version, everything right about it. It's a good amendment. It tracks closely the HJ Res 1 as well. And sometimes it's just that sort of dealing with the divides in Congress that you need to have a couple of different approaches. So that's number two. Alan will follow up on that. Number three, and now we're getting to some stuff that if you're new, this is great. We have a citizen pledge. And Marnie, if you could put that in the chat, or Chris, some of you may have signed it already. If you think you're on our list, but you don't remember signing the citizen pledge, please sign it. It's something that is going to be an effective tool to build our strength and unity together. And if you're just getting started and this sounds like something you want to help move, sign the citizen pledge. If you have already signed it and you've been with us for a while, copy that link, send it to 3 friends and tell them, hey, I'm doing this thing. Check out this pledge. You might want to join me. That's all you have to do. And we'll get some more people behind this citizen movement. So that's number 3. Number 4, we have a ton of skills trainings. If you think, you're daunted by doing this sort of thing, hey, we all were. We haven't done a constitutional amendment. We don't get many chances for civic leadership because of the state of our country right now. This is the chance. And you have great trainers and supporters on this team and a great program. So sign up for, and Marnie, you could put events and skills and advocacy training, ways to find out more about that in the chat. So again, all welcome. We're going to have an intro call. This will be a once a month, all hands come on in and we'll gather here again, first Monday of every month. But the special August 10th, next Tuesday, we have a sort of American Promise 101. So if it all moved fast tonight, you wanted to check in and get a little bit of either a refresher if you've been with us for a while, or you want to find out what this is all about and how you could get started. Sign up. We'll follow up with the sign up link. But our wonderful volunteer leaders, again, Marie Henselder Kimmel on this call, and Ann Drum, who's probably on the call, but in Texas, also will be leading that. Number 6, on our homepage is our newsletter sign up. Just go to that, click on if you're new. It's a good way to get started. You're not sure if you're ready to take the pledge, but you want to learn more. sign on to the sign up to get our newsletter, and you'll get up to speed and come in, or not, as you wish. We think you'll find it interesting, and of course follow us on all the social media. So that's a lot. Marnie will remind us again at the end. So if we're trying to take notes, don't worry, we got you covered. And Marnie, I think we're going to open it up to questions now, right?
Yep, that's right.
And comments and sharing either successes, challenges. This is our time to connect. That's why we call it American Promise Connect. Sharing the victories, sharing the questions, sharing the best practices. So have we got any out there, Marnie?
I haven't. If you have any questions, so we can operate it this way. On the button underneath on the bottom of your screen, there's a little reaction button, and it has a smiley face and a plus. And you can click that and raise your hand. Or if you'd like, you can type your questions in the chat, and I'll be keeping track of those as well as Chris. And or you can just unmute yourself and shout out your question.
Great. So we'll be looking for that. And in the meantime, I do want to amplify something that Marie has put into the chat. The AP American Promise 101 is a repeated program twice a month. And so it's great for folks on this who are new, but it's also great for all of us. If you're talking to somebody and they seem interested, but they want to know more, invite them to the next American Promise 101 session. They'll be every 2 weeks, so there'll always be one upcoming. Thanks, Marie, for that. Other questions or comments? All right, don't make me call you out. I'm going to. I know Chet Hunt's on the call. Chet, good to see you again. Thanks for putting that in the chat. And I'm going to make sure Alan sees that and that you two connect, because I know Alan would love to connect with you on the veterans work, and I let him know that you got it started for us down in Tennessee. And so glad to have you here, Chet. Thanks.
Indeed.
Thank you.
We have a question from Beverly Hill.
Okay, Beverly.
Hi, Chris. Really glad to see you in this position. Congratulations. Quick question for Alan LaPolice. You ran on in a Republican primary. I live in the very Republican state of Texas and would love all the pointers you're willing to offer about talking with Republicans.
There's no time for that on this call. I ran in the 1st District of Kansas, and I'm actually just down the road from Dwight Eisenhower's childhood home. And I ran as an Eisenhower Republican. And I jokingly said, today Eisenhower would be slightly to the left of Bernie Sanders. But the point is the same. I think the voters themselves, they just sort of accept who they get thrown into the primary. They just say, okay, that's my candidate. But if anybody wants to run either Republican or Democrat, I would just say, speak the truth and have a platform that speaks to your constituents. I'm a heavily ag-based district, so I spoke ag policy. I'm an educator, so I spoke education policy. And I need healthcare, so I spoke about healthcare policy. And no one questioned me. No one said that, what you are pitching sounds, it sounds like, the government would have a hand in things. People acknowledge that. And so I would say there's a lot more to it, but don't assume because, your district is Republican that those people won't accept pragmatic solutions to our problems. They did, and I came within 10 points of winning a Republican primary against, the Tea Party darling.
Thanks, Alan. And Beverly, thank you. I want to add a few things. Alan will share more. And Alan, maybe you could share the Republican version of the amendment. It's actually not the Republican version. It came out of our Writing the 28th Amendment work. We had town halls and worked with, justices of Supreme Courts of the states and, law professors, but we mostly listened, and some of you participated in those town halls we called Writing the 28th Amendment. And this a language that Alan will put in the chat really emerged from Republicans, Democrats, Independents. Sometimes it's just vocabulary. There is not disagreement on what we want to do, But, you know, if you say overturn Citizens United, that's kind of code for progressive. If you say we need an amendment to protect federalism and freedom and allow the states to do something about the dominating, nationalizing money pouring in from billionaires, that's a Republican argument. And it gets you to the exact same place. So some of that's in the link I put in the chat. It doesn't describe what it is. Trust me, drive.google file, that long one, is conservative case. And this is not about progressives making a conservative case. We have conservatives of all varieties, Republicans of all varieties in American Promise, on our board, on our staff, in our chapters. And so if you're not sure, talk to a Republican and say, you know, what is it about, you know, my case for this that doesn't seem to get a hearing? And honestly, in our politics today, sometimes it's just the messenger. And I want to go back to the ready to ratify model. The reason we had such good meetings with conservative Republicans on our lobby day was we had Republicans who voted for those folks saying why they want them to support an amendment. And so, you know, Mike Gallagher in Wisconsin heard from a Republican veteran, a business leader. That's the ready to ratify strategy. And so there's, again, we can't do it all on this call, but we'll be doing trainings. We have materials. The key is this is not about sort of, you know, tricking a conservative into doing a progressive thing. Conservatives want to do this too. And so sometimes it's just, we need to listen and learn what their concerns are. Like, they're deeply concerned about federalism. And that is traditionally a more conservative Republican perspective. And it's because they think the states are getting overwhelmed with money. And every election now is a nationalized fight between billionaires on each side. That's a deeply conservative thing. I think, you know, the free enterprise argument is why we do business, the business network. And so our strategy helps with this. Beverly, it's a great question because all of us are learning to talk to each other again and to listen again. And that's as important as the end goal of the amendment, is that Americans find out how to talk and live together again. And that's really a rewarding part of this work, especially when we find, like, when I said I was at this farmer's market, not once was there a divisive moment. The one I remember most, a woman across the street, and I sort of jokingly said, hey, you want to help us get billionaire money out of Maine's elections? She said, get over here. And I went over with my clipboard. She filled it out so fast. We had a great conversation. When she got to the boxes, are you know, liberal, Democrat, independent, Republican, conservative, which we ask people to check so we can make sure we're staying cross-partisan. She checked Republican. She was a conservative, and she wanted to sign that so fast. So thanks for the question. Really important, because that's the hardest piece of this work. Once we solve this, there's no stopping this.
If I can say,
Susan Beckett. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to chime in,
I was
Alan?
just going to say, talking. Like, it's exactly what Jeff said. Talking, engaging. And we've got a divisive society where Republicans feel like they can't talk to Democrats and vice versa. And the truth of the matter is, of course we can. Of course we can. And so just talk and find out what's important to someone. And then it almost always comes down to framing, how you frame it. You know, if you frame it that billionaires are buying our elections, Republicans are behind it. And if you frame it, overturn Citizens United, Democrats are behind it. But it's the same thing. It's just framing, and it's having that ability to dialogue. So I just wanted to reiterate that. Start the conversation.
All right, we had a couple of questions in the chat, but Susan Beckett's had her hand up, so we'll go to you, Susan.
Okay, thanks. So during the lobby day, we met with a conservative Republican Congressman Jack Bergman from Michigan, and I know how important follow-up is. So Jeff, the way we left it was that you were going to have the first shot at follow-up with him, and we're wondering, has that happened yet? What's the status? What should we be doing now?
Yeah, thank you, Susan. I'm glad you raised that, and we've been talking. We just spoke or are about to speak with the folks in Alaska, Wisconsin, other places in Michigan, you too as well. I know you've been eager. We have not heard back. And sometimes with all that's going on in Congress, we don't get the best answer or any answer. Jack Bergman, as you recall, General Jack Bergman, was very interested in this idea if it was paired with term limits. So we learned that and we listened and he said, you know, if it has term limits, I'm ready to lead on this. And so we don't have a view particularly on term limits, although it's, you know, like this amendment that we're working on money has the support of probably 3 out of 4 Americans. So we took his term limit language that he'd used before, put it together with the amendment that we're asking him to sign on to, and said if he wants to introduce a combined one or a companion and say, let's do both, that's fine with us. So we have not heard back, and Alan will be in touch with you about that. We were trying to follow up with the office to get a signal on whether they were going to get back to us, but it may be time for, you know, a request from the district for a follow-up, which is always better. But we don't have information yet, but we'll get that to you probably no later than this week or next, right, Alan?
Indeed.
Yeah.
And the language was delivered to him, the constitutional amendment language with term limits coupled with campaign finance.
Yeah, that follow-up happened, but it did not, we have not heard back from him yet.
All right, thank you.
This question kind of ties into that. This is from Bill Bridgman. He's wondering, you know, American Promise linked up with the congressional term limits folks to promote the 2 reforms together. You know, do you have an update on that?
Yeah, that is same related to General Bergman. We heard some interest. Congressman Moulton, as some will remember, trying to work with Congressman Mike Gallagher to service-minded veterans across the aisle who want to see reform, both believers in term limits, and Seth Moulton, but certainly on board our amendment. Mike Gallagher, we're hoping with some great work by our Wisconsin and Green Bay folks, is getting closer and closer. So we have reason to be optimistic. We do not yet have a formal caucus, if you will, for the grand bargain, as we called it. We still have the conversations going, and it is a priority to focus on those members of Congress who are interested in, you know, not just our amendment, but all kinds of reform, including often term limits. And that's, you know, folks like Brian Fitzpatrick in Pennsylvania and Mike Gallagher in Wisconsin, Seth Moulton on the Democratic side, as I said. So no immediate update with obviously everything going in Congress. That's why the work in the districts, in the states is so important, and so important that we grow this and lift this up. But we'll continue to follow up on that and keep you up to date if there's any developments. We're hopeful. Our goal is to have a cross-partisan introduction of an alternative amendment that can bring Republicans a place to rally to. And whether that will include term limits or not remains to be seen. And partly, frankly, there's not uniformity on the term limit side about what the term limit should be, how many years. Some, including General Bergman, want to see expanded House terms because they feel like 2 years has everybody running for office and raising money all the time, and a 4-year term with term limits would be better. So there's still a lot of that which we don't control that influences, how quickly things move.
Other question from Nancy Morgan, money out of VA. I follow you on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just before we go to Nancy, and I look forward to hearing from you, Nancy, I see a comment from Ann Drum in the chat. Thank you, Ann, one of our North Texas chapter leaders and doing great work out there. Spoke to a Republican group club, she says, 2 weeks ago. They asked about term limits, and when Ann responded with this idea of a grand bargain for both of these amendments, she says the room erupted in cheers. And so it is a powerful potential. And sometimes I say just give the people what they want, and that's both of these, and it will really take off. So thanks, Ann.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. My question was about when we were at the conference, it was mentioned that you anticipated having a companion bill in the Senate with Senator Shaheen. And I was just wondering, I know there's all this activity around infrastructure and the Senate is busy, but I was wondering if you could talk about your approach towards the Senate. Is it going to be a Noah's Ark approach where you try to get Republicans on board from the very beginning?
Thanks, Nancy. Great question. And yes, Senator Shaheen, we do expect to introduce the version that is HJ Res in the House side, which is in the chat. It's the amendment that Tom Udall of New Mexico led and had 50 plus co-sponsors. And so we have been in very active conversations with Senator Shaheen's office and expect that introduction. The lobby day did help. It has been affected by the calendar and not just the infrastructure, but the For the People Act push in the Senate and some other things. We expect it to be introduced after the recess. And so talking to your senators about signing on to that is still a very good thing. And we did encourage and glad to report that this did happen, conversations with some of the Republicans about joining that, and inconclusive to say the least right now. And so I don't think it will be a Noah's Ark strategy. It'll be probably quickly getting co-sponsors on the Democratic side and the independent Angus King and the independent Bernie Sanders, but Angus King in Maine as well. And I think there we're likely to see, the reason is, obviously it's hard in Washington for anyone to break out from their party to sign on to something that has 50 Democrats or an independent if they're a Republican, and vice versa. For a Democrat to sign on to something with 50 Republicans is a big, and it shouldn't be, but that's our politics today. So we are continuing the strategy which we're doing in the House. And again, the ask that Alan is making, if you have Republican senators, use the alternative amendment. And the ask is, would you introduce this with other Republicans, with a Democrat, if you want to bring one along, but would you introduce it? So we take away the political concern about signing on to the sort of quote unquote Democratic bill, which it isn't, but that's, we need to meet their needs. And so that's where that stands. Nancy, does that answer your question? Yeah, great. Alan, in the chat, the link that I put in, which was the conservative points. Yeah, did you maybe just copy and paste? Because it was yeah, you got the open link?
An open link, yeah. So that second link will if you've got the link, you've got open access. Sorry about that.
Okay, and then Alan, there's also on the conservative argument on your, among your documents, the conservative case, not the video, but the document.
I'll open it up as well. I'll actually open that on the old link.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
Chris, do we have other questions or comments? I don't know, Marnie, keep me on time. I don't know if we've gone over, but.
Nope, we're doing okay on time.
Okay.
Yep, and I don't see any other questions.
Okay.
Does anyone have any last questions before we turn it over to our chapter leaders?
I will say one other thing before I do want to hear from the chapter leaders for sure. And I see another comment in the chat. Some of you may know about the American Democracy Summit in Austin, Texas. Represent Us is putting that on, I believe. So we'll be in Austin, but as exciting, Ann Drum, who I mentioned, is putting together a terrific program in Dallas that we'll be at. Again, cross-partisan, business-focused, using the Ready to Ratify strategy very effectively. And that's an exciting event, October 8th. I am hitting the road again. As I said, it's great getting out there. And so we're planning events across Pennsylvania, Ohio. We hope. I'm talking to the Ohio chapter and folks, but there's some great opportunity to really crank up the visibility, the grassroots energy. I'm talking to the Wyoming folks about something in Laramie. So if you're interested in doing something in September and October, and it's a pretty tight itinerary right now, but there's some things coming together. And then swinging around your way in Virginia, Nancy and others on the way, the loop around the country, God willing, with this virus staying under control. So I'll leave it there and back to you, Marnie.
Thank you. So thank you everyone for all your questions. Next, we're going to hear from two amazing chapter leaders who are going to share some grassroots victory. Marie Henselder Kimmel, who is New Jersey's chapter leader, and Vicki Barnes, Minnesota chapter leader. We will be having two new chapter leaders on each of our monthly American Promise Connect calls. So Marie, take it away.
Thanks, Marnie. So my job is to share with you about the event that American Promise New Jersey held with Representative Andy Kim, who's a Democrat of the New Jersey 3rd District. And that came about as a follow-up to our lobby day meeting with his chief of staff back on May 5th. At that meeting, she told us the paperwork to co-sponsor HJ Res 1 had gone in that morning. And she said he's still a strong supporter, and she really pretty much immediately agreed to our ask that he appear at an event that we would host to focus on the amendment, the work on the amendment, and the problem of big money in politics. And just for those of you who've been asking about how many co-sponsors and whatever, we've observed several people who either said at lobby day meetings or confirmed shortly thereafter that they were co-sponsoring, but their names didn't show up. Like Andy, so that was May 5th. His name didn't show up on congress.gov under the clerk until July 1st. So there's some delay for some reason in it showing up on congress.gov, but don't worry about that. If they told you they signed on, there was a New Mexico congresswoman who we know that definitely happened with as well. So we were thrilled that we got the commitment to an appearance on an event that we were going to hold, but we were surprised that the news was even better when we followed up with the chief of staff a few weeks later. She then told us that he wanted to do a 15-minute meeting with our chapter members immediately in advance of the public event. So we got to have a dual meeting directly with the congressman and then go right into a public event on our Zoom. I'd like to talk a little bit about our history of contact with Congressman Kim, because I think it speaks to what was mentioned earlier about relationship building and how it's important to have conversations. Our chapter was launched in the summer of 2017, and I first met Representative Kim, then candidate Andy Kim, shortly after he'd announced his candidacy for the seat in New Jersey. I took the opportunity to talk to him at a rally about healthcare and asked about his position on campaign finance, which he pretty strongly believed needed reform even from the beginning. Over the course of his campaign in 2018, we met with him several times, sometimes at rallies, and then we had 2 formal meetings with him and spoke to him more about the candidate pledge, which he did sign in September of 2018. And he did go on to win the seat. And he co-sponsored HJ Res 2 in the last Congress, in the 116th Congress, pretty shortly after he was signed into office. So in 2019, in October of 2019, at the NCLC in Washington, we actually got to go and have a lobby day meeting in his office on the Hill when we first knew him as a candidate who had signed the candidate pledge. That was pretty special because we kind of knew him before he was, right? And at that time, they had the chief of staff at the time said, we would definitely be willing to do an activity with you or an event with you. But after we figured, okay, well, after the holidays, and then of course, COVID hit. So that didn't quite happen. So we did do some letters to the editor. And of course, he was running for re-election in 2020. So then that limits a little bit of what they can do in terms of what might bleed over into campaign type activity. But he did sign the candidate pledge again as an incumbent in 2020 and did win re-election. And of course, now here we are today. I have to say, though, although he'd done some public speaking at some different events about the For the People Act, he hadn't really come out, other than co-sponsoring, he hadn't really come out and done any events specifically about the amendment resolution. So I think that the process of building our relationship with him through the course of his candidacy and then through the first, through his first term and now in his second term, I think helped lead us to the point where we were able to get this public event with him, which I have to say, we were thrilled with how it all went. So we definitely, felt like we had a win moving him up the champion scale of advocacy. from supporter, which is when you're just a co-sponsor, you're just a supporter. You're not really more than that on the champion scale. When you start doing public events and doing op-eds and so on, you move up to advocate, and then we want to move them up to spokesperson next. So we'll see how we do with that. The event on July 14th started with a virtual meeting. We thanked him just like we would at any meeting with a member of Congress. We thanked him for the meeting and for his participation in the public event that was going to follow. And he thanked us, which was like, wow, you're thanking us? But he thanked us for our cross-partisan work. And he reinforced with us that this, cross-partisan approach is really what needs to be done to get an amendment. And he does do a fair amount of bipartisan work and sponsoring and co-sponsoring bills. So, he knows of what he speaks. He reiterated his concern about the division and vitriol in politics these days. And he felt that a lot of that negative campaigning that's predominated by outside money creates that problem in our political process these days. And he again said that, he really felt that Congress needed to work together to get significant work done for Americans. So after a little bit of a discussion with him, we said, okay, well, we have an opportunity for another ask. He didn't really, we have this public event coming up in 5 minutes, but time for another ask. So we asked if he would be willing to consider. I gave him a brief explanation of this strategy of the alternative amendment language that we had spoken to two Republicans, Representative Jeff Van Drew, who's a New Jersey Republican, and we had met because we're close to southeastern Pennsylvania. We had met with a former member of ours and her sister, who's a constituent of Brian Fitzpatrick in Pennsylvania 1. We had met with his staffer about the alternative amendment language, and we sort of mentioned, because he's done some cross-partisan work with both of them, and said, if that comes true and we're going to do this Noah's Ark approach of 2 by 2, would you be willing to consider that language and be willing to be one of those Noah's Ark sign on 2 by 2? He said, definitely. When that's at a point when you're ready for that, come back to me, because I'll definitely consider that. And I'd like to definitely work on that with you. So we feel good about that. And then we asked about, well, then could we maybe think about collaborating on an op-ed in the fall? And he said, yeah, definitely. We'll definitely do that. So we have a few more asks for him to fulfill. The public event was billed as American Promise New Jersey, has a special guest, Representative Andy Kim, in discussion. Congress must represent people, not money. And I wanted to use it to highlight some of the realities of campaigning, because his district is a purple district, and his experience included significant outside money in both races, both for him and against him, almost $10 million in each of the 2 races that was split between, what was spent against him and what was spent against his opponent. And both of the races included a millionaire who had moved into the district to run, who significantly self-funded. So since that negative influence of money in politics was a part of his platform in both races and the need for the amendment, we felt our event was perfect to explore his thoughts about that experience. And the discussion, we think that was very good. And what was mentioned before, we have a YouTube of the whole event, which I think the link was posted previously in the chat. So the 2 most poignant comments were, he said that he thinks the problem of money in politics is worse now than when he first ran. He really saw that over the course of that first 2-year term and what's been happening since January, that it's gotten worse. And that, again, the divisive polarization vitriol is exacerbated by big money. The second point, he emphasized to us that he really feels that money determines what issues can even be considered by Congress. That yes, the money advances certain issues, but it also sets the agenda and seems to keep some pressing problems from being discussed at all. And that was, I hadn't heard it said exactly that way before. So I thought that was sort of an aha moment for me. But as I said, we were really inspired by the event. And we're really happy with what came of it. We had 2 press releases beforehand. We've had, I think, 4 letters to the editor since pitching. I'm pitching a letter to get an article in about it, which I haven't, but Gregory just shared with me that there's a Medium, in the Medium series for American Promise. I think there's an article and some clips, just some of the key video from the from the event. So if you get a chance, take a look at that. But I want to mention to all of you who are chapter leaders and who are volunteers in various chapters that I can say that although I've been a citizen leader in American Promise for 4 years now, I learned at least one new advocacy skill in each of the 5 training teams that were useful to me in setting up this. I knew a lot of it already, but I had something that I learned from each one of the 5 advocacy teams that I used in setting up for this event or running this event or following up from this event. So I'd really advise you, if you haven't yet, look at the 5 teams, see if there's only one that really appeals to you, then check that one out. And I will guarantee you that you'll add some tools to add to your advocacy toolbox to improve your advocacy. So those are my comments. And if anybody has any questions, ask.
Does anyone have any questions for Marie? I see a clap for you, Marie, from Alan.
Thank you.
Well, if there's no questions for Marie, I just want to say thank you always for sharing your insight. It's been so helpful for me. And now I'm going to turn it over to Vicki Barnes, who is the chapter leader of Minnesota.
Thank you, Marnie, and thank you, Marie. The Minnesota chapter launched in February of 2017 in the Twin Cities. And since that time, we've been working on expanding our message beyond the cities to reach Minnesotans in rural and more conservative areas. We know the amendment to address the outsized influence of big moneyed interest in our elections and policies has broad cross-partisan support nationally. But we need to demonstrate to our state and federal elected officials that their constituents, regardless of party, are supportive. Over the 4+ years of our work, we've done several events in Wright County, just northwest of the cities, and have quite a few members who are active in our chapter there. However, our attempts at getting a cross-partisan membership have not been very successful. Well, we finally realized how to reach a broad representation of political leanings in the county. The Wright County Fair. Most states have county fairs, often put on by the County Ag Society. And these are small events that highlight the work of farmers, growers, ranchers, and more from the county. There are rides and demolition derbies and music events that draw great crowds. They're affordable family affairs with lots to do. At our booth over a 5-day period, we gathered pledges of support. Attendees filled out constituent comment cards for us to hand deliver to their state and federal legislators. And we answered questions about the amendment process. This was not a hard sell. As they walked by and displayed interest, we'd say, "Hi, we're working on an amendment to the United States Constitution that would enable Congress and the states to set reasonable limits on spending in campaigns and elections so that our voices are heard over the big moneyed special interests. Is that something you would support?" And as we'd make our pitch, they would draw nearer. They'd tell us what their concerns were. Some mentioned the need for term limits. Others were particularly concerned about big tech money. Many wanted to get big money out so that better candidates would be able to run. We ended up with over 80 signed pledges, with self-identified conservatives outnumbering self-identified liberals 2-to-1. We also walked away with 8 new volunteers to help with local and state resolution work. We consider this a great accomplishment and look forward to another effort this month in Carver County, most of which is in the same congressional district. But I do have to say, because I've been working on this for a while, that my big takeaway is that when they would mention term limits And I would say there is an amendment proposal in Congress for term limits. You should call your congressman and ask him to support it. And they would say, oh, he'll never do that. Oh, he won't listen to me. Oh, he doesn't care. And these were people who voted for him. So we have a lot of disenfranchised people out there who don't realize what their role is in our government. And I would tell them, look, most people run for office with good intentions, but when they get there, they're sucked into the system and they don't find a way out. This is their way out. And unless you give your congressman the power of your support to stand up to leadership, nothing will change. So hopefully some of those thought about that and are looking at it, you know, in a way to help with that. But it's really clear to me because I've been working on this a long time, and there's so many divisive issues that other than redistricting, which is tantamount right now, getting this amendment passed is the most important issue for all the reform groups. This is the bridge. This is what bridges the divide between the parties, the people learning how to speak up for themselves. And this is the topic that will pull them all in. So I'm hoping that we see a lot more action with these big democracy reform groups, flotillas, you know, collaborators, to put this issue in the front so that we can really talk to people across all political divides and get a good momentum going. So on the whole, they were great people. We had really great responses and it was hot as heck. So anybody have any questions about that?
Yeah, Vicki, I have a question. This is Nancy from Virginia. What do you plan to do? Hi, Vicki. What do you plan to do to follow up with these people? That's always the most difficult challenge in terms of finding them, engaging them in activities that allow them to find a voice.
Well, on our pledge, which they physically signed a pledge, there was a block to check if they were interested in working on local or state resolutions. So I have 8 volunteers that signed up, and I will be working with them in the county, both with their congressional, their member of Congress, and their the local government there in the state, of course. So we've already gone before the Wright County Board of Commissioners, and they invited us to come back. So now we'll have more people to work on it, and obviously to put pressure on the state legislator. But most of them, of course, didn't. They signed the pledge, but didn't sign to volunteer. But we do have that information, and we can use their numbers when we approach their legislators.
And just another question, because I was really interested that you actually use postcards. You said that you had postcards, and did that work well as a tool?
And so the postcards were blank on one side and had the information on the Americans, the University of Maryland survey of 75% of all Americans, including 66% of Republicans, support the amendment. And the back was blank. And we did have some people sit down and fill out a really nice, from a small business perspective, plea to their member of Congress to work on this, and we'll hand deliver them to the Congress member. But we found it really didn't lend itself well to people sitting down and taking the time to write something out. But we know from the past that if we had it already written out for them and they just sign it, that would be disregarded. So that particular venue wasn't the best spot for someone to sit down and spend some time in 97 degrees weather to make a plea for their member of Congress to support the amendment. But I think other venues it would work pretty well, but we will hand deliver those. Anyone else? Thank you.
Vicki, can I just jump in? Thank you so much. That was wonderful. And Marie as well. I may have omitted, I might have gone fast. If I did cover it, forgive me, but This kind of conversation, as Vicki just described, is so powerful. And I saw it in Maine as well. And whenever we're out, these conversations will renew your faith in the American people that this is something we really can do. So we have trainings coming up, and that's what I wanted to add. Marnie and Chris will be leading tabling trainings for how to do this in your community. We have great materials. We'll get them to you. We've got t-shirts and hats and all kinds of fun ways to do this work. It really is inspiring, and will give you, I think, energy and feedback loops that are so different than the ones you get on the media in terms of where people are at. So if you want to get out there, sign up for the table training, and we'll get you all the materials you need, the support you need, the community and connection you need. And Marnie, maybe you can just pop that in the chat about where people could sign up if they want to do a training.
Yep, I'll do that now.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, does anyone have any additional questions for Vicki and or Marie? No? Okay, so we have about 20 minutes. So we're gonna have a little conversation, if everyone's open to it, just about, we've touched upon this a few times about our team calls, that we have some amazing chapter leaders that are leading them, and how all of our team calls tie into everything we've discussed, everything Jeff has discussed, Alan's discussed, Marie has discussed. And in order to really pass this amendment and move forward, we need participation in our team calls to dive into conversations, write those letters to the editors, friend bank, call your friends. So I'm going to have Marie again, just jump in and just share, how has friend banking been helpful to you?
Well, particularly when it came to, I've used it for a couple different things. I've used it certainly to, sort of reach out to people who maybe got a little off the beaten track with COVID and had walked away a little bit, not been participating. So I've used it for that. I've used it for, inviting, because I'm doing the healthcare professionals network with Robbie Duda from Michigan and with Ellen Greenbush from Ohio. So I've used it for inviting physicians. I'm a retired physician, so inviting physicians to participate in that. And I also used it just with the Andy Kim, actually, the friend banking, particularly with the Andy Kim event. I reached out to people who I knew had better contacts in Ocean County, which is a little further away from me, where I didn't really know people. And I asked them to, please post on their social media connections there. And it was somebody who came as well to the event. So it can be used for a lot of things, but it's inspirational when you tell somebody you're doing something that's making a difference, and not just them say, well, that's really hard work, that's good for you. Well, guess what? You can help a little bit. This is a low bar to, this is a low bar to cross. You can sign a citizen pledge. You can come to an event. You can help if you have a contact to put me in touch with someone in a different district that I don't have a volunteer for.
Awesome, thank you, Marie. And touching on friend banking, sometimes being a millennial myself, my friends don't always love phone calls. So working with Vicki, we kind of created a new idea. Instead of just, calling my friend, hi, do you have time to talk? I just send them a quick text, because I know they will respond to me very quickly over text. And then I'll just give them that call. So kind of creating that first point of contact and then diving right in. I know it can be a little nerve-wracking calling people, but that's what I've been using that helps me. Does anyone have any questions and or comments about our upcoming team calls? We have some great team leaders on here that will happily answer along with myself.
Marnie?
Oh, yes.
Is me?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I just wanted to point out, we were talking about tabling a minute ago, that on our National Organizing Events team call tomorrow evening, Laura Nittmeyer and I are going to be talking about tabling. So that's an opportunity if you want to get some great pointers about tabling and even do a little role play dialogue for fun. I put the registration for tomorrow night's meeting in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Anne. I saw that you unmuted yourself, Nancy. Do you have a question?
No, I just wondered if Anne would like to talk a little bit about the letter that you developed, the format you used that in a recent meeting. And I thought that was an interesting tool where you have the letter and then people just write their own thoughts. Could you remind us how that went?
Well, sure. And first of all, I have to credit Citizens Climate Lobby for the idea, because when I have tabled with CCL, we have taken stacks of, it's a form letter that has a little bit of general information at the top and then a great big place in the middle for people to write in their own words why they want their elected officials to take action, and then their contact information on the bottom and a checkbox, a couple of checkboxes, one to opt into the email list and one if they're interested in volunteering. And so it is my plan to do this when I'm tabling. My plans got sidetracked by COVID, but my letter is ready to go at the next tabling opportunity. And I'll be talking about this tomorrow night, to collect letters that then we can take into meetings with elected officials to demonstrate that there is support in their districts for the constitutional amendment. During COVID, we kind of came up with an online workaround. Chris helped me come up with an online template so that when I speak to groups, I can give them a link and they can go fill out the letter. And then we did a mail merge to produce a PDF. And we did deliver 3 or 4 dozen letters that were constructed that way. But it's going to be just more impactful, I think, when we can table in person and collect letters and engage people in a very, simple action that they can do right there at the tabling event. So we're going to be talking about this tomorrow night at the National Organizing Events team. And so come to our meeting and learn more.
Great, thank you, Anne. And I'll also share as well. So if you are wondering, so how do I register for these events? So you can go on americanpromise.net, and then on the top of the page, there's a take action button. And then when you click the little arrow pointing down, you then can click attend an event, and then it shows the American Promise calendar. So there's a ton of different exciting calls. And then, for example, August 3rd, which is tomorrow, as Anne was sharing, those are the organizing for events reform call. You just click on that box, and then there is a link where you can register for the calls. And you then will get an email with a Zoom link, and you can just click right on and join the call.
Hey, Marnie, do you have time? Would you be able to share your screen and just show, go to americanpromise.net so people can see that as well as hear that?
Yep. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so under take action, you click attend an event. And then here's our awesome calendar. And here's the organizing events for reform team call. And you click right there, and it's a recurring event. So you can click here to register. And you can sign your first and last name and your email address, and you'll get the confirmation email.
Great, thanks,
Does
Marnie.
anyone have any questions on those steps or need me to further explain? Nope. And I think we're all Zoom pros right now. Any other thoughts about or questions about our upcoming team calls, or just anything during this call this evening?
Marnie, if you don't mind if I make a comment.
Sure.
Okay, so this is my comment. I attended, and somebody else did. I think it might have been Vicki, but I'm not 100% sure. Braver Angels held about 3 weeks ago, held an event where they spoke to Derek Kilmer and William Timmons, the co-chairs of the House Select Committee on Modernizing Congress. And so their job, if you're not familiar with it, it was started in the last Congress and continued in this Congress. Their job is to find ways to improve the way Congress functions, how they speak to each other, the work schedule, just all kinds of different things. And they were asked the question. They came up with a report with, I think, 31 different recommendations. That number is sticking in my head, but it might be from our common purpose. But anyway, they were asked the question, well, how many of your 435 colleagues, there's only, I think, 20 or 24 on the, maybe even less than that on this committee. They said, how many do you think of your colleagues know what your recommendations are? They said maybe about 30%. That floored me. Because here, this is Congress, spreading news around in Congress. But they said their work schedule, they really only see people on their committees. So it just reinforced to me that we really need to be communicating with our legislators, because they may not really understand about, first of all, what the people want, but also even that there's much movement around this if they haven't signed on before, if they're new to Congress, or for this alternative amendment language, that there's something else coming out in terms of if you have a conservative Republican or conservative. So it's really important to continue reaching out and do all these steps of advocacy, the letters to the editor, the meetings with members of Congress, and getting other people involved, because it floored me that this is Congress working on improving Congress, and they think that only 30% of the 435 House members even know what they're doing.
Thank you, Marie. So we have about 10 minutes left. If there isn't any questions or comments, I can end it right now. I just want to keep track of time and make sure that everyone is able to share if you would like. Alan?
This call seems like, we're all true believers and we all know the objective and we pretty much know how we're going to get there. And I made a comment about tabling and how exciting it is. And I made a comment earlier about engaging with people, especially people of a different political persuasion. Most people that I talk to think, well, it'll never work because you can't change the Constitution. And I'll remind them that they're called amendments because it's precisely what you do. And they'll say, well, it's just a heavy lift. You're trying to change a part of the Constitution and a part of our government that just can't be changed. I'm sure that they thought that when they tried to get women's suffrage. I'm sure that they thought that when they tried to pass the 13th Amendment. When you're talking to people, you have the opportunity to say, yes, it seems like a heavy lift. You've got this extra bonus opportunity to say, but it's our lift together. We share it. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that heavy, especially if you pitch in and go one step further and find more people to pitch in. And it really doesn't take, it's not going to take, 150 million people behind us to pass this amendment. I mean, it's far fewer. It's every state that passes a resolution, we're that much closer. Every time there's a chapter that goes out and, gets people to sign on, we're that much closer. Every time you talk to a member of Congress, we're that much closer. So it's really not that heavy a lift, especially when there's more people involved. So, what's harder, passing this amendment or losing our democracy?
If I could chime in there too, Alan, I often say, well, luckily for you, we've been working on this for quite a while. So we're over halfway there. So the more people that jump on now, the quicker we'll get it done.
Exactly.
If I may make a shout out also to John McRae, our new business network manager. He's in Reston, Virginia. So we had our first in-person meeting with him in Reston, and we had 6 or 7 of us, and it was so empowering. And And I think what the strongest message that came out of that, we're doing deep dives on legislators to see who we can, who influences them, how we can influence them. And I think that what John did was he made us realize that even though we aren't business people, we can go and interact with local chambers of commerce. They often have get-togethers that are open to nonprofits during the month. I joined the West Alexandria Weston Business Association. They have happy hours. So it's interesting. I was a bit intimidated by the business aspect, but I realized that through discussions with John, and it might be worthwhile having him on a call and talking about the ladder of engagement with businesses, is that it isn't going to the CEOs of corporations, but you go to local people who are private sector. They don't necessarily have to be a business owner, but you get them to sign the statement of principle and then try to get them to advertise it on LinkedIn. So it was a really empowering engagement of saying, yeah, I'm not a business person, but I have opportunities on a local level to engage with businesses. So I think that American Promise is really moving ahead in terms of building, having expertise that really empower all of us. So thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Marnie, and thank you, Alan. And Dr. Jessica, of course.
Thank you, Nancy, and everybody. It's so great to have you all here and start connecting together, and in real life, as you said, Nancy. It's really empowering now that we can get out and connect together as well. And let's bring more people back this time Monday. So, and all those other great events. Marnie, back to you.
Awesome. So thank you everyone so much for coming. I thought these conversations were fruitful and they left me feeling motivated, and I'm gonna urge my friends and family to come to this call at this time next month. So in closing, I would like to share the call to action one more time. I will also post it in the chat. So our American Promise Connect calls meet on the first Monday of the month. So come back next month at this time and bring 3 friends each so we can keep spreading our urgent mission and building this inspiring community. So again, our call to action is, if you haven't already, sign the Citizens Pledge. 2, attend a tabling training, which will be conducted by empowerment coordinators, myself and Chris, on the 2nd and 4th Wednesday and Tuesday of each month. You can sign up for the call on the American Promise website. 3, attend our skills and advocacy trainings. As well, you can register for those calls on the website. And there's one tomorrow night, as Ann mentioned. 4, subscribe to receive the American Promise newsletter, and you can do that again on the website. And then follow us on our socials. And if you have any questions or need anything, you can email me at Marnie, MARNIEW @AmericanPromise.net. And that's all lowercase.
Marnie, two quick things. First of all, the first Monday of next month is Labor Day. So will we be pushed back to the 13th then?
Yes.
Okay. And the second thing is, don't forget the American Promise, the Intro to American Promise call. The first one will be next Tuesday, the 10th, and that will be added to the email. The link will be added to the email. I know Ann put it in the chat earlier, and it's going to be going up on the American Promise calendars as well.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for attending, and everyone have a great night. Bye.
Thank you, Marnie. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
See you soon.